we are going to start anyway. We don't have more people here yet, but ¿por qué no se han entrado ahora?
Okay.
Yes. And we were, so yeah, we're going to do it in English because both Fatima and Margarita can do the conversation in this language, even though if someone has questions in Spanish, Margarita can also answer in Spanish. Fati, what did you say?
Or question in Catalan.
Yeah. If questions are in Catalan, exactly. If questions are in Catalan or Spanish, I will translate. Also, if you want to write them down, Jordi, or whoever is joining, you can just add the question here. I will write now also for if people is arriving later, they can just, gracias. They can just write the questions and you can answer afterwards. So yeah, I'm going to briefly introduce the both people that we have there in the screen, coming from leaving the COP30 from. We have Fatima Isam Heldin. She's a worker here at the University of Barcelona. She's part of the exit group, the group of Martí Horta, and she's a colleague of mine and Gorka and Marcel. So I'm also looking forward to hear from her how is everything going in Brazil? How are the last hours or last day of the negotiations? I have been reading the updates and everything, but it's always better to feel it from the place. And then we also are going to have this conversation with Margarita, that she's a representative of the Django constituency, that is the youth and children constituency. So I'm really looking forward to listen your both perspectives and have this conversation about your experience, not just in this COP, but also in COP29, COP28. So you have already a background on this type of meeting. So I give you the floor. And yeah, we can make some questions at the end and after listen your contributions.
Thank you so much, Alex. So first of all, if anyone has questions, please just write it in the chat, and then at the end we're going to check them. I'm going to start. I can hear myself, but I don't know what it, but I think it's okay. So I'm going to start with something that I mentioned last Tuesday when I loaded. And Marcel and I were talking about how much or how not can we influence the negotiation. And I think a point that I made is that just coming to a scientific side event, even if it's very, very relevant for any decision that needs to be done, is not influencing the negotiations. However, I must add that especially recent years, the civil society is growing, the civil society and COP is growing, and they're very well organized. The one thing that I experienced first since COP28 is how through media, the civil society tries to influence the decision makers, and it's influenced to the world. So they are very, very well structured and strategizing in a good way, because some countries are receptive to criticism or receptive to some messaging that can come down in their own respective medias in their countries or even international media outlets. So I think that's one thing that I just wanted to add. Plus, obviously, there are decisions to be made here, even though the whole process is coming throughout the year. It's happening in Bonn when the parties come together and negotiators already talk about the decision that might happen at the end of the year. So there are things that can be affected. Obviously, as we see the whole process, but still there are a lot of things. And I think, and this is how I will turn a little bit to Margarita, the other thing that is super important is we also have constituencies that are involved in the whole process. So it's not only the countries, but also these extra constituencies, and they're also very well prepared and following the negotiations. and adding all the information that needs to be added for the negotiator to make the best decision. Politics is but still, these people, civil society, academia needs to be here to make sure that there's a pressure, so the decisions that are made are more aligned with what. So I think with that, I'm going to ask Marguerita, who is also part of the younger constituency, as I mentioned, to maybe just very shortly introduce yourself and just tell us why you are at.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I'm Marguerita, and right now at COP, I'm one of the youth delegates. Specifically, I'm the representative for the FAST partnership, which is basically a partnership between the FAO and the UNFCCC that focuses on increasing climate finance, both in quantity and quality for agri-food systems. But I'm also, since a year and a half, following closely in general, the climate finance negotiations in this space, representing youth at different points. Because as Fatih said, COP is not the only place, right? And negotiators, I think, more than Bonn and COP also have several negotiation sessions across the year. But I'm also part of the grassroots movement in Spain, which is going to COP30. And so my background, I think that influences a lot also then the presence that I have in the space. My background comes from grassroots movements, and here I'm also one of the representatives for COP30, which is the equivalent for Fridays for Future Spain. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. So it's super interesting, and I think one thing that is very impressive for me. And before I continue, we also that this place is getting louder.
Fatih, we cannot listen you super good. It's really blurry when you talk. It's okay with Margarita, but with you, it's a bit tough. It's more complicated.
So then Margie, tell me when there is something. So yeah, I was just saying that actually this place is a little bit louder, but hopefully it's still okay and you can hear us. So so I think one thing that is super impressive for me in what Margarita is doing is that she is a university student and still so involved in these multilateral processes. And maybe if you don't mind sharing like how you exactly got into these places.
First, so maybe also as background, I'm doing my bachelor's right now in political science, and I'm in my second year. And I think, of course, I started, as I said, with grassroots. So several years ago, getting involved on the ground. For example, Fridays for Future Spain is a movement that is across several territories in the country, and that we are always inviting you to get in. And I think that's a very good start, and that this movement acts a bit of like a door to then, you know, just getting into the climate space and really understanding a friendly space for youth that maybe doesn't know or doesn't have as much knowledge, but wants to do something. And so I started there, and I think little by little, of course, like I started at the local level, then at the national level, and now also representing internationally in different campaigns. I think this is something that you, not only because of the interest in the topic itself, but the community that you have, and that you see that there's so many people around you that are also youth that are interested in tackling climate change, not just from the perspective of tackling climate change, but also social justice. It's really motivating, right? And so even though I'm not going to lie, I mean, being in university and, you know, doing all this and following closely, sometimes is challenging. But I think that the fact that the spaces have been so open, both in Fridays for Future, but for example, for Young Girls, so the youth constituency of the UNFCCC, this is an open space. So it's possible that any young person, and when you say young person, we consider youth until 35. But I mean, the majority of us are a bit younger than that, and to get into the constituency and to get into working groups. And so the working groups are, of course, divided in the different negotiation packages, so mitigation, climate finance, adaptation. And it's a process where you have to learn, because, of course, there's a lot of people that know a lot, and the UNFCCC can be a very technical space. And, you know, even though I've been following this for, I mean, it's my third COP, fourth if we count the biodiversity one. And I've been in this space, and still there's a lot of things that I don't know. And I think like I've been talking with people that have been here for 20 years, and can you hear me? Okay. Good. Yeah. And they're still learning as well. So it's a process. I think it's very important to understand that it is more a learning experience, and that we shouldn't be afraid of like, I don't know enough to be in this space. I'm too young. I don't know. And having like this, it is the space to learn. It is the space to try to get involved. And Yango is also like, I mean, if someone cannot get involved on the ground, it's like also online. And so that of course facilitated the fact that I could like follow things, even though I moved from Spain. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it answers very well. So I think maybe for the next question, we can turn a little bit back to the COP. And so all the COP are same, but also different in many ways. So my question is, what are the challenges or opportunities that you see with this COP in Dalam itself?
Yeah, so I think this COP was a big, we had big expectations for this COP because the last three COPs have been in places that there was not as much space for civil society to actually voice their demands. And so I think for like a year and a half, we're all like, no, but in Brazil, we're going to, really make ourselves heard. And so that is something that was an opportunity, a big opportunity. And I think not only for civil society across the world, but specifically also for indigenous peoples, and putting the focus on the Amazon and putting the focus on this tropical forest, which technically everyone knows, that it's one of the lungs of the earth, but we often just let it, it's overlooked. So definitely, I think civil society has used that opportunity quite well, and we were in the streets on Saturday, and there was a lot of actions, and we were able to really voice our demands. And on the other hand, I think like a challenge can be that also looking from the last COP, that sometimes it's hard. I mean, the presidency in this COP decided to adopt a different strategy, so they did not delay the agenda like in other COPs where the maybe conflicting items between countries are discussed, and they said no, let's just take this to bilateral discussions, and we solve it next week. Well, we're seeing the challenge now. We've been 2 days without any texts, and let's see how this strategy ends up coming out. But I think the fact that these topics are more controversial, and especially around finance, which ends up blocking everything else, both mitigation, adaptation, and so on, has been delayed, and it is now being discussed, right? So I think it is a bit challenging also for civil society to know how can we influence if for the last 2 days we have no clue of what is happening in the rooms, because they've gone to this format where it's really almost the end of COP, so they need to decide between themselves without having anyone external from the countries. What are they going to do with the text? And that of course limits our access to influencing and to trying to be at the doors of the negotiations and just voice whatever demand we have according to their decisions.
It's super, super informative. Thank you so much. In terms of finance, what do you see how the process is going during this law, or maybe even for when people were preparing for the
Yeah, so finance I think it's a hot topic because last year it was a finance COP, right? So I think this is important to put in context. And we did not come out happy with the results. So just a little background, we were supposed, from civil society, we made a lot of pressure to have this called new collective quantified goal, which is a lot of difficult words, but basically means to set a number of money that will go for climate action. The thing is that from civil society, and according to the Paris Agreement, we were hoping that this money would be from the global north to global south, also in terms of operations, and we were hoping that it would be grant-based, so to not just further the depth of these countries, and to really be real reparations. But it did not happen. And one of the things that we were always stressing is that we wanted both quantity and quality, and we ended up having none. So the quantity was only 300 billion per year, and we were asking for 1.3 trillion, also, of course, based on scientific research and what was needed. We keep hearing countries saying we have no money, but then there's also several scientific research that if we look at how money is being spent, how much money is being spent in security, how much, even if we don't want to talk about security, we just look at how much money is being spent in subsidies for fossil fuels. I mean, there is the money, it's just not being directed to the right cause. So having that background right now, I think this made that global South countries had resentment with this outcome. And they wanted to see this justice of the global North providing for the global South. And so they really, really acted strong and said, no, we want 9.1 in the agenda, which means it's the only article in the Paris Agreement that really stresses the need and the obligation of global North countries providing money for global South. So it's really the provision of financial funds. But of course, this was not something that the global North wants to accept, and that's why also there has been a lot of difficulties in the negotiations. I think from the presidency after this NCPG being so, not something satisfactory. They said there's going to be a back to Berlin roadmap, so everyone also had hopes on that, saying, okay, let's see how will the NCPG be implemented and how much margin we have to also maybe make it a bit better. But this roadmap, we've been waiting for it the whole year, and it came out a day before COP. So of course, you can imagine as well that for negotiators and for civil society, it is very difficult for us to, analyze it and come prepared if the presidency just releases one day before. And maybe to not go too broad, because I don't want to be also getting into technical. I think the main issue in general is that the global North is saying, we don't want to provide any more money. Being in adaptation, being in disposition, being in the finance packages, we want just to stick with the NCPG, which was what we agreed on. And we don't want anything that will entail more money. Of course, it is a problem because climate action, any kind of action, being public, being in the private sector, requires money to be something that becomes real. So the discussion is revolving around a lot around whether even in just position, do we want to just put it, or adaptation, do we want to put as part of the implementation of NCPG, or do we just want to, block the package, which is what the EU is doing, and also other global North countries, because we don't want to provide them.
Thank you so much. So just to say again, the NCQG is the new quantified, new collective quantified goal, which is about this finance. And I think just one thing you mentioned, that why it is needed and why the styles companies like to have money to actually do adaptation, transition, is because the climate crisis is not a crisis that they contribute to, right? So we are talking about, you cannot hear that. Is it better? So maybe I can talk to that one, or try to speak louder.
Now it's much better.
Oh, now we cannot hear you.
It was lost for a few times.
Okay. So I'm just saying that there is a real reason why we need this money, why the global North that contributed to the crisis that we are living needs to help the global South that are suffering more the consequences of this whole crisis. So, but yeah, I think maybe this is something that already everyone who is listening or later on will listen to this video know. And there was something I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned, I just to explain a little bit more. Last year, the outcome you were talking about, we wanted quantity and quality as well. Can you please just explain what is the quality?
Yes. So I think when we talk about quality, of course, we talk about a human rights-based approach, but we also talk about the fact that, finance and the financial system in general have been very, like when countries from the global south receive money, it has been very determined by conditionality. When the private sector also is involved, we have no way of knowing, of having accountability, of having transparency. If we have grants, meaning just money that is given to these countries, maybe as reparations, and public grants, there is a need to have transparency from the government. There is a need to, normalize accountability and maybe even create standards that go across the different countries and that can be looked at from the UNFCCC to understand if things actually work. So if we have, for example, private and public, again, the transparency gets lost. This is one of the things we talk about when we talk about quality, but we also talk about the need for this money to go, for example, to vulnerable communities. Because also what tells us that even if the money flows from global north to global south, publicly, and in grants, that those countries in the global south are also going to provide to those communities that are in the forefront of the climate crisis, which are the ones that get less access to finance. So again, like having transparency, I think transparency and accountability is a big pillar. And if you want a human rights-based approach that also prioritizes indigenous peoples, the people that are suffering already from the climate impacts, but that are also agents of transformation in their territories, and that they have access to have resources to keep being these agents, then it is very important that quality is considered, and that it is highly concessional as well. And yeah, that it does not contribute to further injustices where, there's conditionality and they are obliged to do climate action in a certain way by global north countries, or also, that, they're not able to implement it and get more depth out of tackling a crisis that they're not responsible.
Thank you. So I hope you can hear me well. So just getting back to what kind of influence people can have. It's not that, okay. So just getting back to what kind of influence we can have on the ground. I just want to mention just very briefly that, for example, this small group of researchers coming from the University of Barcelona with the Unburned project, we got the chance, my colleagues Marty and Gorka, they got the chance to talk to the Catalan delegation. They got the chance to talk to people who are from the Spanish negotiators. They even got the chance to talk to the third deputy prime minister, who is the co-facilitator of the mitigation work program. And it is just a very, very interesting thing that we have the access to the people who will be there when decisions will be done. And it's not an easy place, because even if we have a few people that we agree with there, that doesn't mean that they will be able to convince the others to agree with them and do something tangible. So I think that's just wanted to add this extra point. And maybe as a last question, and then we can get to questions from anyone who is listening or from you, Alec. Have you had any discussions with someone who is part of the negotiations, who has say in what comes out at the end, and how was it?
Can you hear me well? Perfect. So I think the conversation and negotiation with negotiators that are really the experts of the different packages is a crucial part of what we do as a constituency, because we want to make sure we're not only in the room, and even though we have a space to speak usually at the end, we also want to make sure that we can have conversations with these negotiators. So I've had several experiences. I think it's something that we always try to also map which negotiators, are strategically to talk to, and so on. And maybe I can highlight one good and one bad experience that is more recent. So in one hand, we have the Colombian negotiator, and I think Colombia right now is being really a global leader on so many things. I mean, we have the Colombian Declaration, and even in the topics that are a bit more trickier, they make themselves heard and they are really standing for justice. So we had a bilateral, so meaning a conversation on a one-to-one with her. And I think we went to her as Yango also being like, okay, finance packages are being so hard. And what is going to happen? The US is leaving. Like, what are we going to do? You know, like more this type of conversation to try to find like an alliance and also see where did she think it was strategic to act. And I think it was very emotional because, you know, you can also see in the room who is really standing for climate justice and who for them, this is just a job. And I think it was really incredible to see that her answer, I mean, besides the strategic and the technical part, which I don't think it's the important thing to go into right now, she said, I know it's hard, but it's now that we need to act more. So don't come with this, you know, desperation and saying, oh my God, the inevitability and climate change. No, now it's the time to act. Now it's the time to make ourselves heard in the negotiations rooms. Now it's the time to really understand technical level as well to make sure that we can act together, not only in the political demands, but in the technical ones that will shape the political demands. And I think this is very inspiring because we see how, you know, negotiators in this room can also, you know, they are facing, I mean, they didn't sleep this tonight, for example, nor the night before, but this message of like that we often go into this pessimism, and especially with how the world is right now, it's very hard not to go into. But I think it's very important as well for this reason to listen to, okay, don't let yourself just, you know, get down. Like you need to rise up right now. This is the time to rise up. And maybe I should have ended with this one and not with the bad one. But maybe another one I can say is that we met one of the people working on the Brazilian Ministry of Agriculture. And of course, then we see also this contrasting view where it's much more neoliberal thinking, where it's just about, you know, how to actually benefit the market and not benefit the small farmers or the people that are sustaining agriculture. How to sustain more the like really, value chains that are really, you know, perpetuating climate change instead of maybe thinking about transforming agriculture. So I won't go into too many details, but I do want to say that it was not the most pleasant conversation in the sense of seeing how much of far away from a justice perspective and we can be and still prioritizing the market, even in some of the countries that are from what we consider the global south, right, at the moment, such as Brazil. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think if there are any questions, that would be great to hear. And then we will, after that, we will get back to this COP craziness around us.
Yeah,
maybe I give this to you. Yeah.
I was wondering if you have time. How long do you have?
How long do you have?
I think maybe 10 more minutes.
Okay, perfect.
So 10 more minutes.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, thank you for the insights. I think that it has been, it's really nice to listen from you that are there and are experiencing all these negotiations, and yeah, how frustrating can be, but also how it can also lead to meet other people and see that there are a lot of people working with the same idea of social justice and the need of urgent action. So I think that this is one of the best parts of being in this type of negotiations. And then I have a couple of questions. The first one, I wrote it down there in the chat, is, yeah, you were talking before about the global north against the global south, like this global north resistance to deal with the funding, the part of the funding, especially. How do you think these resistances from the global north should be addressed? So how are we? I was reading today the briefing from Eco side, I think, no, from the Climate Network, and they were saying like they were talking about different numbers, different amounts of money that people was sometimes discussing in the meetings. Like they were talking about $700,000 or $1 million or $5 million. Like it was a resistance from the countries from the global north to give this money to projects, and they were saying like this is the 700,000 is money that maybe a person that is working through COP is aiming to earn during their own lives. So it's nothing incredible. It's not an incredible amount of money. So it should be easy, and we shouldn't be discussing about this. When they were comparing the 1.2 million, that's the money that it's the cost of one pavilion, one of the big pavilions there. So it should be possible to address this money to climate action. That it has an effect. So yeah, I just wanted to hear your reactions on this type of thoughts, and how do we do it? What do we do?
Yeah, so I think that's the $1 million question, right? That's what we're all trying to see. How do we do? What do we do? For sure, I think this was also something that came out yesterday about how much it was spent on pavilions, and that it would be even interesting to see just a comparison of how the same country that are blocking, how much money they spent on the pavilions, and how much money are they saying that they don't have. I think one of the problems here is that they insist the most in this. Well, their argument is there's no more public money. We need private finance. And I mean, we had to. I mean, there was last year we lost this battle. It's a tough truth, but we lost the battle in the sense of like there is private and public finance in the NCPG being contemplated now. So that's why we are pushing also so much for this new and the global south countries as well. The article that I mentioned before, which is the 9.1, which again talks about providing finance. And it specifically mentions, so if you look up in the Paris Agreement, it specifically mentions that in the UNFCCC language, that developed countries will provide this financial flows to developing countries. So I think the matter here is that we're pushing to try to make this as robust as possible. So to not just stay, and it seems that it's a direction that is going into now, but let's see what will happen. But to not just stay written somewhere, but just like actually try to convert this into an agenda item. Like, so there are negotiations on this article, or to try to make it part of like something else. Like, so I think, and maybe to say that with the 9.1, there's also the 9.5 of the Paris Agreement that in its start, it talks about the need for the transparency. So how developed countries should do biannual reports of how will they provide this finance, right? So it also is not okay if you just say, yeah, I'll provide the finance. No, we want reports every 2 years, seeing how is this climate finance going to be distributed across the system. And these have been the discussions that have been blocking negotiators the whole night yesterday, and I think we're going to get a text soon. And so the idea is that, and this is what we pressured for, we need transparency, we need accountability, and we need that articles like 9.1 that will refer to justice, but also the fact that what is going to make it accountable and transparent is going to become something tangible. It's not just going to be part of a decision that does not even mention. And this is what we're pushing for here. And we're also, I mean, we have to be strategic and also maybe thinking about possible lending zones. And when we talk about adaptation finance, for example, where they were saying, we don't want to give more money or just transition, then we think, okay, what if then this becomes part of the NCQG? Because also the NCQG has been approved, but there has not been yet enough talks about how will this look like and to what will the money go. So this is possibly like lending zones that we're thinking about, like, okay, of course we want everything, right? We are trying to push for everything. But then when we talk to negotiators and so on, trying to see, because the EU, for example, has said that it would be a possible lending zone to, have adaptation finance under the NCPG if in mitigation there's a robust plan for the phase out of fossil fuels. So of course we're managing here like a lot of different positions and so on, but I think we keep pushing and we always go for the higher we can go, but we also try to be strategic when we talk with these negotiators. And I think one last thing about what we can do, there's a lot of narrativas derrotistas in the media. Sorry, Patti. In the media, and especially reporting for COP. And I think this is harming the movement. because it is important to be here. It is important to be part of these processes, because if we're not part of these processes, fossil fuel lobbyists will be. People that are against the transition and a just transition and are have interest in that the climate crisis is perpetuated, they will be here. And this is something that is not really addressed. And we see a lot in the media, so much narratives that are really, it's this feeling of we already lost. It's not worth for anything. And I want to say, I think in terms of what we can do, we can be here, we can even act on the streets on our home country. On the 15th of November, on the Saturday that we had a big mobilization here, there was mobilizations all across the world to voice the same demand. And this has an impact. In Dubai, the reason why we got to transition away from fossil fuels and not something worse was because of the highly successful campaign that we had from civil society and how the media was also supporting us on that. Because otherwise, you don't know, mention even would have been happened. So, yeah, I think, I'm sorry, I went a bit long, but I hope that.
It's really good to have this positive note, because it's true that I have been reading as well that there are a lot of input on we should stop COPs. They don't work. They don't. Nothing happens in COPs. Like we have been 30 years, and I think that it's easy to fall in this this narrative as the disaster, like that nothing is working. But it's true that it is needed to have this type of like meeting points, and also like it's like the. It was a scientist that they was saying that it was like the homework for students. So if you don't have the yearly meeting that all the countries need to provide, of course, there are some that they are not going to give the homework, others are going to do it on time, others are going to be A, or others are going to be D minus. But it's important that this is still a moment of a meeting and putting this into the table. So I'm just going to, I have two more questions, but I'm going to just throw them, and then you distribute the time as you want. The first one was connected to the roadmaps. I read that the Brazilian government, or the presidency better said, they are promoting this type of roadmaps to fossil fuels transition away and other roadmaps. And I would like to know a bit more of your thoughts about these roadmaps, because I also read that it was connected to, can you hear me? Yeah. That they was connected to these hidden negotiations, and they are not being super transparent about how these roadmaps are defined. So I would like to, you mentioned it before, but I would like to hear a bit more of a specific line on that. And the other one is, the last one is about youth. I mean, this session, for instance, was suggested to students to come here and see what was going on. I mean, there are exams here, and so there's not a good time, but I mean, it's the time that we have to be here, and also that for youth to kind of face the problems and also take the lead, because as you are an example, no, that the youth had a lot of energy, had the possibility to go everywhere, and I think that here there are a lot of talent, a lot of people that could be doing that, but often they don't have the tools, or they don't know how to do it. So I would like to a more practical note on how would you invite students from here to join, and what would be the channels that they will be better. And yeah, that's it. And anything else that you want to finish the talk, it would be, I'm sure it will be great. Thank you.
Thank you. So very quickly, because I know you have to go.
That's fine.
So in one hand, for the roadmaps, indeed, right now, I mean, I don't know if in the last half an hour, because I haven't been checking the phone, but the texts have not come out. So the options that we had 2 days ago, there were options that stressed the roadmap, there were options that stressed a plan of action. So there's still quite a lot of uncertainty on what is going to happen. What we want to see is something that is not going to take 3 years or 4 years for a roadmap or for a plan. We need, okay, we can have a roadmap, but a roadmap is a roadmap. Is deciding the direction of where something is going to go. It's not already like negotiating on that. So I think that's why, like, from our perspective, it's very important that we already, like, we don't spend so much time on possible roadmaps or plans or whatever, that we can have them, but let's also think about what is going to come after in the time, because we don't have time. But this is something that I cannot say too much about, because there's going to be new tech, and indeed they have been in closed doors negotiations for the last 2 days, so it's a bit hard to comment. In terms of youth, I think I said it before. My suggestion would be to, one also has to see what is of most interest for themselves. As I said, Django is open for youth, and I think it's a good place to start to understand how UNFCCC processes work, even if you don't want to become a member. And the process is just to fill a form, and then you probably get a message, and you choose what working group you want to become part of. And even if you don't have the time to commit and to, just be an active member, they provide a lot of capacity building sessions. And I think this is very important. They provide always, overview of the negotiations, overview of what happened, overview of how it works, what is what is the Paris Agreement, what is all these things. So, and these are public as well, even if you're not a member. And I think so that's very useful. And then I would say also to get involved in the local work, right? In the local activism that is happening at home. So there's these two different branches, because there's the more policy side, which of course it depends again on the preferences of oneself. And there's the more, grassroots based action. And I would say that for me, one of the things that motivates me so much is that I can relate to the fight that, we did on the ground for so long and we're still doing, and that we're organizing. So it's not just something abstract where you're looking at texts. You're thinking about your country. You're thinking about the fights that you're taking to the streets, to the demonstrations that you have had, and what were those demonstrations responding for? I mean, the fires, what is happening in the whole Iberian Peninsula. I'm Portuguese and Spanish. And so, of course, like the two countries, and I mean, Italy as well, and Greece, Southern Europe is already being at the forefront of so many disasters. So I think if you get involved in your home and in your locality, and you're able also to, it's resistance. So you can connect it to what is happening. And I think in all over Spain, there's like several movements, of course. As I said, Fridays for Future Spain is where I started, and still am. And I think it's a great door as well to start. But if one doesn't have the time or the energy, which is also fine, there's always this capacity building opportunities and the chance to get in. So I would say Yango, also Climate Action Network, also have like several capacity building sessions. And I think it's a bit of like just putting a bit of effort. If now that okay, where to look for the information, if you try to see, I think you can definitely look for and get informed. And as you get more information, you also decide what is your interest. Climate change is so broad. I mean, it can be applied to everything in life, literally. And there's so many areas. I mean, I started in the resistance, and now I'm focusing climate finance. I never thought that was going to happen, but it was naturally also because of the justice issue. It happened. So I think it's, once you start learning, and also very important to never pressure yourself and never think oh, but those don't know much more and it's so technical. It's fine. That's, it's a process that we all went through. So I would say go to the streets. Don't fall into narrativas derrotistas, colapsistas, because, there's hope. There's hope, and we see it every day here when we see the people that are doing actions, but we see it also even how the world is. And I'm saying this, of course, with also a lot of pain for what is happening in several parts of the world. But that's why, I will repeat what I said before, that it was also the conversation that we had with the Colombian negotiator. It is the time. If we stop when it is most needed, then of course we're not gonna win, right? So I think changing the mindset and seeing that this is actually an opportunity to resist more than ever is what is needed.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Amazing. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Margarita, to being here, to be the inspirational person that you are. I think it's super, super valuable, everything that you can share with us. Yeah. And thank you so much, Ali, to help organizing this session.
Yeah,
let me just give this. Yeah, we cannot listen at the same time and speak. So.
Okay, sorry. No, I was just saying that thank you for your bright messages from COP. I think that is super needed, and yeah, I'm just happy that we have this session to listen in this energy. So good luck with the rest of the days, and the rest of your life, because you are like an important piece. You both are important pieces for the future. We all are, but and then we need to support each other and do this network that you said, because it's really needed to have someone to join you and keep working in this this topic that is the more important of our times, I would say. So we have to be doing this. Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.